Hey painters, good morning. We are live, ready or not, from the studio in Colorado. It's a little chilly, got the jacket on. And hey, today we're going to be talking about all things palette knife related. I'm excited because I love using a palette knife, and I hope you do too. And if you don't, stay tuned. We'll talk about the pros and cons, of a palette knife, why you might want to use one, how it can help you in plein air painting. And yeah, I'm all crouched in here in the studio, just kind of trying to get in the camera, but I'll remove myself in a minute and we'll get to painting. And this live show is the first Friday of every month, live from the studio in Colorado. And what we're trying to do here is just trying to improve our techniques for plein air painting, so that when we go out in the field, it's automatic and it comes to us without a second thought. And so we work in a controlled environment here where you can control the light and nothing changes, and you can focus on values and colors and color mixing and concepts and techniques. And so like the old saying goes, if you can paint a still life, you can paint anything. And I really believe in that. So anyway, stay tuned at the end. We'll have a live Q&A at the end. We're going to be a little quicker today because I've got an appointment. Okay, you got me. I've got to go paint the mountains. So I've got some drive time ahead of me. But hey, we'll make it action-packed, make it value-packed and worth your while. So hey, if you're watching on the replay, feel free to skip around this channel. We've got lots of demos and tutorials for plein air oil painting, landscape painting. And we're just meeting. I'm Terry. And this channel, Learning Plein Air, is all about helping beginner plein air painters, or even if you painted for a few years or longer, become better painters and make beautiful paintings and become inspired and educated here. That's what we're doing every Friday, the first Friday of every month at 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. So welcome. If you're in the chat, say a quick hello. We'd love to hear from you and see who's here. A lot of people watch this on replay. But hey, let's get started with, I've got a quote of the day. I saw the angel in the marble and carved until I set him free. I saw the angel in the marble and carved until I set him free. Do you know who said that one? That's a pretty popular quote. I like it. It's kind of cool. Michelangelo. And so I don't know if he was talking about the Pieta or Statue of David or what he was talking about, but wow, pretty crazy. But we've talked, carving the Statue of David and plein air painting are different, but are they so different? We've talked about envisioning and seeing your painting as you look out in the landscape before it's completed. Look at the values. Look at what drew you to the painting. Why did you come here? Why did you point your easel in that direction? And so that's a very cool. We're going to talk about palette knife painting, which is kind of like, you're chiseling. It's getting thick. And so I hope that quote inspires you. But hey, let's get going. I'm going to sneak out of the camera here and put you on the painting. And we'll get rocking and rolling. And again, if you're in the chat, say a quick hello. All right, so I've got you on painting view here and still life view. So you can kind of see, this isn't the greatest camera in the world. You can see what I've got set up here. And what we're going to do here before we start this live stream is brought to you by the Learning Plein Air newsletter. So click the link below in the description. I've got a couple free videos in the description. Even if you don't want the videos, click that link. It'll take you to a place where you can put your email in, and that'll get you on my email list, where I send that out once a month with tips, techniques, and what I'm working on, and projects and things like that. So if you're interested, go ahead and click that and join. We'd love to have you. So I think what we're going to do here first is I'm going to scrape this apple off, because I did this painting yesterday in about an hour. And truthfully, I just did it for practice. As I told you, I'm trying to go back to my training in Russian impressionism and my roots, where we painted, quite frequently, almost every day, still life. Because if you can paint a still life, you can paint a barn. If you can paint an apple, you can paint the river. And so I just did it quickly. And it's not about, is it beautiful? Do I love it? It's not really about that. It's for practice. And so a nice thing about a palette knife, let's just get started right off the bat, is you can do stuff like this, right? You can scrape. And what's interesting is when you do that, it kind of leaves some of the values behind. And no matter how hard I try to scrape that off, that's probably going to stay there unless I really get serious with it with some turpenoid. But so I think that's what we'll do. And, palette knives, let's just look at these real quick. Try to show you here which camera angle we're looking at. Is you can kind of see them in both cameras, I guess. But I've got really three main ones that I carry, and I think this is, if you click the link below, like that link that says where I get all my oil paints and where I get my canvases, thickblick.com. If you click on there, I think it'll take you to stuff like this. But I should probably have a smaller one, but really I like to paint bigger shapes. And so these are the 3 knives that I've got. And you're going to use them for cleaning your palette. So if you're just a beginner plein air painter, or beginner painter in general, you need a palette knife for various reasons. But hey, today we're talking about painting with that palette knife. And so what I'm going to do is, did I make that apple too big? Yeah, probably. So I make them big so that you can see them in the picture. But why don't we just really quickly, the shadows, interestingly, just observe the shadows here are darker today than they were yesterday when I painted. I painted yesterday in the afternoon. Here we are at 9 a.m. in the morning. Studio light is going to be different at different times of the day. I just find that interesting. But just a side note. But I'm just going to quickly get in shadow colors here and just kind of carve around the apple and just kind of start over, really, is what I'm going to do. And we'll start with a palette knife. We'll just paint this sucker with a palette knife, and I'll try to just do it all with a palette knife. We'll see if I can resist, the temptation to use my brush. But this apple will look better if I just do my shadows really quickly, a little bit darker. So take some ultramarine blue and a little bit of titanium white. We'll do a little alizarin crimson, a little bit of cad red, just to make a nice violet color. And we got way too much red in there, so I'm just going to go with more ultramarine blue to violet it up a little bit like that. I think you can see me mixing this on the camera. Hey, again, if you're in the chat, just say a quick hello. If not, if you're shy, don't worry. It's all right. And we'll just stick with that color right there. We'll just put a little cerulean blue and a little bit of cobalt blue in there just to see what it looks like, just see what we get. Yeah, it just kind of made a little more violet as I anticipated. So hope you're having a good week. Hope you're having a chance to paint, and I'm glad you're watching this on Replay or Live, and really just trying to improve our skills, in plein air painting. And so I'll just put this shadow a little darker as it is today, and it'll just help us, to kind of define that apple a little bit more. And it'll make it pop a little bit more, I think, is what's going to happen. So, I didn't even draw out the apple. Okay, let's just say the shadow's going to be like right there. You know what I mean? Just roughly. Something like that, Okay, so there we go. And, let's just talk about some of the benefits. Here's the first benefit, or pros and cons, the pro that I see with palette knife. See what I'm doing here right now? Cleaning your brush, okay? As you know, brush cleaning and brush care, it's a whole thing. It takes time, effort, money, whatever. Here's how you clean your palette knife. You're done. There. No terpenoid, no odorless terpenoid, no chemicals, no nothing. And so I'd say the first biggest benefit, just kind of aside from painting, is it's way easier to clean, than a brush. Okay, let's get in on this apple. And part of the reason we're doing this is light and shadow, So I can kind of see by putting you see me do this little trick before, a little trick of the trade. When I put my palette knife in the light, I can kind of see where it disappears and where it reappears, the shadow of the palette knife or a brush, whatever you want to use. I'm just trying to see where the shadow is on the apple. And I can kind of see right now that it's like right here, the shadow part of the apple. So, let's just go ahead and mix up a little bit of alizarin crimson, and then we'll do some cerulean blue, and we'll just make a nice, real deep red, rich shadow color. I mean, I see it as kind of really more like an alizarin crimson kind of a color. But the nice thing about a palette knife, is that you can really paint thick and you can really add some texture. So, it's like I don't even really have a whole lot on there, but feel free, to load it up. And, again, some of the pros, less expensive than a brush. You can layer up, a lot easier in many ways with a palette knife, thin to thick, because you're kind of pancaking the paint right on, whereas with a brush, you're smudging it in and picking up the under layers, if you know what I mean. So I'll just add a little bit of cad red in there, a little bit of permanent rose, just because there's some reflected light in that shadow. And, the nice thing, you see that kind of technique right there? Like, I didn't really mean to do that, but that broken color technique that the Impressionists used to use, and taught us is with a palette knife, you can really do that. And you can do it nicely, But right now, I'm just trying to get that kind of shadow portion of the apple, make it a little bit smaller maybe, and just get that in. But hey, here's why a lot of people use the palette knife is texture, boldness, confidence. I mean, there's no hiding. Like you can't really. You can try to, kind of tiptoe your way around it with a palette knife, but like I say, it's like a bucking bronco, man. It's you can't control like every aspect of it, and so you can blend like this. I can blend one color into another. I can let the ridges show and leave them. So I can push into and sculpt and leave the ridge if I want, or I can smooth it out. I can smooth all these colors together and just smooth it out, like that. So it's up to you. Make a mistake, scrape it off. That's the beauty. That's the beauty of a palette knife, We'll just keep going here. And why don't I get, when you see a still life like that, there's a deep, I call it a core dark, but there's a deep, rich shadow where the light cannot really get to, usually in every part of a still life. And I'll just go phthalo blue, a little alizarin crimson, and kind of make up a colorful black. I try not to carry black on my palette much anymore these days, but you can make a deep, rich, dark black, from these beautiful colors, And so, hey, more pros of a palette knife. You just saw me do it, like the side of a blade. You can use the side of your blade. It just has a lot of utility, like that. It's just nice. I mean, you can do kind of hard strokes like that. You can turn it, and then you can blend. Like I said, you can take a stroke like this and just blend one color into another and make a nice, make something nice like that. Maybe you don't see that as nice, but hey, again, if you're joining us on replay, thanks for watching. Skip around the channel, see some other plein air landscape painting videos in Colorado with tips and techniques, and I'm just glad you're here. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for watching. We talked about the broken color effect. You can fix mistakes. You've got the side of your blade that you can use beautifully for different techniques. I'm probably going to leave this pot alone today. I'm just going to work on the apple. Let's put in the light part of the apple. So I'm going to go, like I said, there's a definitive shape to the shadow portion of the apple and a definitive shape to the light. And when you're out landscape oil painting or pastel painting or watercolor painting, you're outside and the sun is shining, you're painting what's called a light and shadow painting. If the sun is not shining, you're painting what's called a local tone painting, There's no sunshine. You're just painting the value and the color of the object as you see it, as it exists locally. Okay, but when you put light on something, you have to paint differently and think differently in terms of pieces. So let's go a little cad red, and it's not the darkest, reddest apple, so I'm going to go into like little yellow ochre. Put a little permanent rose in there just to kind of see. I'm going to put a little bit of titanium white, but not too much because that cools it. If you want to warm a piece of your painting, think first in terms of warmer colors as opposed to a little orange, as opposed to titanium white. I mean, I use a lot of titanium white, but you got to know that it's going to cool. It's going to cool your color mixture. So just be careful when you want to lighten something. So just get another big old glob of paint on there. You don't have to. You can paint thinly with your palette knife. You don't have to do what I just did. But again, I'm going to try to follow the light shape of that apple and not get too concerned about it. I'm really just thinking in terms of big shapes. And you can see I'm kind of maybe too much on the orange side there, which is fine. I can just go and I can change that, put a little alizarin crimson in there, and it's no big deal, I can leave that color under because it'll show, it'll show like the broken color technique I was talking about. But I'm going to try to find just a general shape of the light portion of the apple right now. Right there, right there, right there. And you can see it's just fun. It's just fun. Like that's another benefit of a palette knife, see the different technique that I'm using. And I'm not really being too, too careful about staying in the lines, if you know what I mean. And if you want to do that, if you want to stay in the lines, that's fine. Just get some smaller palette knives. Get really small palette knives. These are probably medium sized to a little bit larger. But there's like 30 different kinds and shapes of palette knives, right? Like this shape. Here's an important point that I want to kind of convey, to you. There's different shapes, right? But don't, like I say, don't pick a brush or a palette knife to get a desired effect on your paint. For example, I'm gonna use this old brush like right here because it's 40 years old and it's so old that it makes it look like grass when I paint it. Like I just, as kindly as I can say it to you, I advise you not to paint that way. You got to see things, and then paint. Grass isn't always painted up and down, right? Don't think like that. You have to untrain your brain. You heard me say that in my last video that I just released. That you got to untrain your brain to think like that. You can't do that. And so it's the same with palette knives. Gotta put that in the trash. Is experiment with the different shapes, but not because they make it look like something. For example, okay, let me give you another example. So there's a knife like this. There's a knife with this shape, like right here, that is like half as big. It's about this big. And you can make a beautiful like sunflower petal or a daisy petal by going like this. And you'll see it on YouTube. It's fine. I'm not judging, but if you just go like this and stamp around it, it's super fun and it looks super cool. You can make yourself a flower just by the shape of the brush. That's a different kind of painting than what I do. I try to see color relationships, and I don't try to choose my brush or my palette knife for the subject that I'm painting, right? Like if you're painting water or grass or whatever, who cares? It's all about the temperature. It's all about color. It's all about those kinds of relationships. Okay, there's some yellowish in there, so let's just try to get that real quick. Now here's another thing. The darkest dark on that apple, and I can just take like some phthalo blue and just maybe a little alizarin crimson, but not much. And then just seeing the way that goes, the way that kind of core, the way the core sits right there. You see how that changes the relationship of everything? We have a really, really dark and a cool, and then a really bright, a bright light spot on the apple. And so it becomes all about contrast like that. So a little more yellow ochre. I'm not going to overmix it. And I'm just going to put it on there like that and have some fun and let the colors run in, If you could see that up close, you'd see that there's striations in that color. It's not all mixed the same way. Okay, here's another thing. I'll take some titanium white, a little bit of yellow. I've got just kind of green. You can take some blue, I guess, and just don't overmix it again. And then there's some reflected light hitting right in there, in the core. So you want to kind of show that. And then I'm not nearly done yet. Let's do a couple more things, then we kind of go on to a Q&A. But here I will tell you, one of the cons of a palette knife, we've already talked about it, is that you can't really get that accuracy. That's why I kind of call it a bucking bronco. You don't have the same, even though I can use the side of the brush like this, you don't have the same accuracy, as you would with a knife. But you can solve that problem by getting smaller knives. And so you can kind of do that and see how that works for you. But that is a very real negative, I think, of the palette knife. But there again, that's exactly why people use it, because they don't want to necessarily, be as accurate as they would with a brush, So I'm just playing here with different kind of blending techniques to see what happens. It's just kind of fun to do. And you can kind of show the shape of that apple a bit with some of your blends. It's kind of sitting, the apple's kind of sitting a certain direction. And so you can kind of show that. What else here? And with practice, so yeah, it's not that accurate, the palette knife as a brush. Well, practice. I mean, I'm not nearly as good as I could be, with a palette knife. And I've been doing it for years, but you can practice and make yourself better. You can practice and make yourself better. And so that's one thing you can do. And then, okay, so there's a little bit, let's get that little yellowish, greenish color that's in there. So titanium white. And we'll kind of finish on these strokes right here and go into some questions or whatnot. I will say this, that you don't need to use a medium, like liquid impasto or linseed oil or any of that stuff, odorless terpenoid. You don't have to use that. You can, but part of the fun and the purpose and technique of palette knife painting is to layer up and just use pure thick paint. Let's just see. Oh, it's going to be too dark, I think. I'm going to go a little more titanium white, a little more yellow ochre. But where the light is hitting right there, that kind of yellowish color. And I think I think I'm just off there a little bit. It needs to be greener. So let's just go like this. Titanium white, a little ultramarine blue, and then a little more cad yellow, medium. Maybe a little more yellow. And that's appearing too greenish. So when that happens, just push your pile aside. You can start over. If you kind of mess it up or you don't nail the color. It's a tough kind of a color, that green on the apple. But I'm going to save that color because the shadow part of that yellow color is in shadow and part is in light. So what I can do is I can just kind of keep that shadow color, like right there, coming in like that. And then I can brighten it up, with the light like that. Probably a little too bright, but just to make a point. Color mixing is tough. It just takes practice, and nobody gets it right away. You just have to be persistent until you get what you're after. But and then what I would do there is just go back with the palette knife and go over it again, dark back into the light. Just juxtaposition it back and forth is what I would do. And just have fun, just play, just experiment. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing with this is the palette knife is it's a chance to do something out of your ordinary, and see what happens. Just play and experiment. I think that's good as artists. We need to do more of that. We're always concerned about making a beautiful painting, and it's not always about that. It's not always about that. So you can do stuff like that. So just moving along here real quick, and then what you do lastly. Sorry, I always find one more thing, right, is a highlight. So you can see where the highlights are on that apple. Like there's one right there. Make that a little more pronounced with some cad yellow light if you want. And then the highlights usually follow the shape of the apple, so they can help define and show the shape of an apple. So, man, that was fun. I really liked that. I hope you got something out of that. But I would say experiment with sizes and shapes of palette knives and see what works for you, and use it how you want. Like experiment. Like there's no right way. You saw me just kind of goofing around in front of you, just have fun. You can kind of do whatever. Do it how you want, and you can press hard or you can press lightly. You can go different directions. You can use the side. You can use the flatness of the blade. And these are flexible. I think they're aluminum blades, and so they've got some give to them, but they're pretty strong. They got a nice wooden handle, and so this is a good tool for you in plein air landscape painting. I use a mix of brush and palette knife almost in every painting. I find that there's a place where I can use this, so I hope you can too. And if you've got some questions, drop them in. But if not, I am going to head up here to the mountains, and I hope that was helpful for you. And so I'll switch back to myself here real quick and say a quick goodbye. But see my links in the description for all the tools and stuff that I use, all my painting supplies. I have an affiliate link with dickblick.com, so at no extra charge to you. You can click on there and go see what I buy and go shopping, man. So hope that was helpful, and I'll put another video up here for you to watch of mine. And hey, God bless, and I'll see you guys up in the mountains.